everyone. This is update for July 29, 2023, day 521 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for July 2028. I'm going to start with, as always, with strategic updates, and I'm going to switch to the situation on the front line in Ukraine afterwards. So, as you can see, I'm going to talk a little bit about the macroeconomy, what's going on in the world, as it really defines everything else, what we're experiencing. So first, going back, well, not going back, but sort of starting with the U.S. As you can see, U.S. posted inflation data. This is PCE, core PCE. Core means that excluding like volatile items such as commodity prices, such as gasoline, food, and diesel fuel, and so on. So as you can see, and this is the most important goers that being watched by the U.S. Central Bank, Federal Reserve. So this is extremely important numbers, put this way. So as you can see, it's going down. A lot of it's thanks really to, basically base effect, which means that last year prices were up quite a bit, and the increase is not as is not as strong this year. But overall, it's very clear. The trend is very clear in U.S. Inflation is slowly but surely is going down. That's now let's switch to Germany, and the situation is definitely much worse. So we can see that inflation did tick down 0.2% from 6.4 to 6.2. Actually, as you can see, if you look months ago, it actually went up to 6.4 from 6.1. So if we compare 6.1 to 6.2, inflation is technically still up, right? 0.1%. This is actually a result of the economic policies, and specifically energy policies in Germany, where they closed nuclear power plants, they closed pretty much all of the power generation using conventional sources, or reduce it to a minimum. And that's a direct result of that. And then the GDP follows, because behind GDP, it's always power generation or energy. And if your energy goes up, GDP price, cost of energy goes up, GDP goes down. And this is very clear situation here. We can see that actually decline in GDP is actually accelerating, which is also kind of like in line with this stubborn inflation, especially if we look at this 6.1 versus 6.2. Things definitely not in good trajectory in Germany, and they won't be until there are changes to the energy policy in the country, which doesn't look like they are coming anytime soon yet. And I would like to compare this actually with CPI data for France, where, first of all, inflation is not as bad. It's definitely not great, but it's smaller. It's only 4.5, 4.3%. And it's clearly, going slowly but surely going down on a downward trend. And here we can compare versus, and one of the reasons for in case of France is that if you really think France really kept the nuclear power generation, which is one of the cheapest resources next to, it's a little bit more expensive than hydro, but it's very cheap source of energy. And so you see that, first of all, effect is not as negative, because France simply didn't go as far destroying its own conventional energy as Germany. And so that's the result. And US is actually this, another case for this is, US is not as actively destroying its own power generation as Germany. So basically, Germany is really pioneer, and so the results are the worst out of the everyone who follows this energy policy. Now I'm gonna switch a little bit uh, to Russia, Poland, and somewhat it's related to Ukraine. But basically, Russian president gave a speech to during closing of the Russia Africa summit, where he basically the uh, what he really said is that in his view, um, Russia should be in the borders of the Russian Empire as of 1914, which really means that um, you know core Poland should be sort of under Russian control, and the western part and the northern should go should go back to Germany. That's I'm just explaining his view, his worldview, how is he seeing the world, which is would be very interesting to find out what's his position on Kaliningrad region of Russia, which then technically should go to Germany as well. Um, so this is his position. Um, if there is opportunity, he will sort of try to execute on that. So that's doesn't mean that the um, the Russia will invade Poland right now, or it's imminent or near term. It's definitely not going to happen. He was very clear. If NATO doesn't attack us, then we don't attack NATO. But if they do, then we do as well. So basically, kind of this position. But he's definitely will be waiting for the weakness. And I believe that Polish government, Polish sort of society understands this very well. They're actively buying new and quality, the most important part, quality military equipment, making it extremely expensive for Russia to attack Poland, which is the best deterrent from the conflict. So they're doing, I would say, I would single out Poland as one of the few countries that are doing absolutely right things for themselves. They're building out their military, preparing and doing it in a quality way. Except they a little bit overstretching themselves, and definitely economy is having hard time to support because weapons are not cheap. Paying soldiers is not cheap, so they actually had to borrow 16.5 billion US dollars from South Korea to pay for the weapons. So just kind of gives you idea, and they already this is on top of the prior payments where they paid basically in cash. So how stretched Poland is economically at this point in terms of military expenses, and how much is actually needed if you really, intending to create formidable military force that is able to deter a strong opponent. Then would like to mention about this Suwalki corridor that was mentioned because there is a lot of sort of scare because 100 Wagner mercenaries were moved apparently to Grodno region, which is here in northwestern Belarus. And then there is a scare that basically they would like to establish direct land link to between Kaliningrad and Belarus, which is definitely not going to happen, at least not right now. There is still, as I said, there is something about this Wagner mercenaries being in Belarus. There is some plan. Maybe it's sort of contingency plan. We'll find out. Extremely hard to predict what they're trying to do, but definitely building um, the building corridor or land link to Kaliningrad is first of all it's suicidal and it would not get Russia pretty much anything. Right now, they effectively blocked. This Kaliningrad region is effectively blocked, but they're able to supply everything through the sea, even though this is more expensive and so on. But it's sort of kind of it's sort of works. It's not perfect, but it works. So there's no really point to basically start the war with NATO at this moment for Russia. There's no question about that. Um, and then in terms of the grain deal, Russian president mentioned that he's going to have a conversation with the Turkish president with respect to the grain deal on Wednesday. Um, and the Russian position is very clear. First, you're gonna connect our bank to the SWIFT system so we can basically receive payments for our grain and allow us to unimpededly export fertilizers and grain. So the position is very straightforward. Is if that sort of those items are met, then they probably willing uh, to renew the grain deal. The big problem is that there is considerable damage being done to Ukrainian port infrastructures to extend grain in Ukraine will be bottlenecked, but at the same time, I think it's better than nothing, as they say. Um, Now let's switch to the situation on the front line, and I'm gonna do a walkthrough in a clockwise fashion, as I always do, starting from the north. So the situation along the state border remains the same, no essential differences. Uh, you know, medium level intensity of the adversarial actions, but nothing major there. Now let's switch to North Luhansk front line. Things here are more or less the same. Russian, with one exception, Russian side is continuing uh, to push in the same direction where they established this small bridgehead on the western bank of this tiny river. They're attempting to expand it and kind of push forward with it. So far, they were not successful. They were stopped. Again, this is tactical developments. This is not major Russian offensive. The reason Russian side is putting this pressure is to pull Ukrainian reserves from Zaporizhya front line and from Bakhmut area. So this is kind of like a mirror tactic that Russian is mirroring what Ukrainian side was trying to do when there were incursions into Russian territory, into Belgrade region, where there was hope that that will pull um, regular Russian units from the front line, from let's say Zaporizhia and Donetsk front line, North Donetsk front line, and then central up to the Russian to Belgorod region. That as I mentioned before, that plan failed, and so Russian side is sort of trying to repeat the same idea. I don't think it's going to work out for them, but nevertheless they try. Otherwise, there is nothing really major happening here. Let's now move to the North Donbass front line. Things here are fairly quiet, just tactical skirmishes, nothing major. Even here in Klishivka area, there is a temporarily pause. Ukrainian side is pressuring Russian defenses. I wouldn't say that Klishivka is fully in Ukrainian control yet, but sort of it's a work in progress. It may take several more days, but as I said before, this is something that will be achieved, as well as a small tiny village Andriivka here. The only problem is the cost and price for this achievement, because even though this is going to be achieved, as you can see, like from the configuration of the front line doesn't lead to anything. And all it means is there is another Russian defense line that needs to be pushed through with the high level of expenses. So basically, if I would say translate this into simple language, is the cost to liberate these territories is too high, too expensive, that Ukraine cannot pay. Ukraine either needs more equipment, more heavy equipment, to be more specific, or better organization, better organization of the army. More, and that really means everything. This is not just purely organization, just better training, better everything. And I would say that like Western training is is helpful in terms of that a lot of the conscripts don't know anything, like complete zero. So it's better than completely nothing, but it's largely um, missing the point. And beyond the basic military training, it's not really helpful. And given how much it costs, it's a huge, uh, you know, black hole for the money. The way it's done, I'd say it's better. There are already enough veterans who were wounded who cannot go to the front line. It's better to organize training using those people. It would be much better. Use of resources would be much cheaper, and so on. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen. It's not happening anytime soon, unfortunately. Now let's move to next section of the front line, central Donbass. Things here are, as always, the same. Some Russian attacks in Marinka. This north of Avdiivka, again, without any success, just mindless attacks. That's all I can say about that. Now let's move to the Zaporizhya front line. So things here are relatively quiet. It's unclear to me if Ukrainian side is regrouping. As I said before, this is going to be another failed attempt because as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it's either Ukrainian side needs much more heavy weapons or better organization. One of the two, combination of the both would be the ideal situation. Without one of those two, things not going to happen. All of this is just going to be a painful squeeze that in the long run Ukraine cannot pay the price. This is war of attrition at this point, similar exactly as World War One was. World War Two was also war of attrition, but World War One is a perfect example. And Ukraine simply cannot win war of attrition. And by the way, the Russian president made those comments during his speech, exactly saying that his words were sort of similar. He was saying that the mobilization potential is nearly exhausted for Ukraine. So that's his view, that's his expectation, that he's basing his decisions on. So from his perspective, he just needs to sort of wait out in defense, let Ukraine bleed itself out, and then eventually, maybe let's say as expected, probably Russian expectation, sometime in the spring of the next year, launch an offensive and just easily gain control over Ukraine. So this is probably the, how to say, strategic plan for the Russian side, unbearing some kind of offensive, but at the same time, the Russian army does not have enough resources for large offensive, and they're also fully aware that they're not capable of doing it either. So that's gonna, if Russian side will try to do offensive, it's gonna turn in exactly what Ukrainian army is doing, and essentially into exhaustion with extremely minimal results. And I just want to mention another important observation about this Staromariorsk, which is here, which was liberated by Ukrainian forces a couple days ago. And the reason it was actually liberated is because Russian artillery actually lost counter battery fight with Ukrainian artillery. So they were severely damaged. I think they lost like 20 howitzers, and they simply could not support Russian soldiers, Russian troops in the village, and that's the reason for this withdrawal. So, and the point I'm trying to make, that this is artillery war. Artillery really defines everything, opportunities and literally everything. Without artillery, and then with artillery, you obviously need something like Orlan 10, which Ukraine still doesn't have. I will continue repeating about this problem, but Russian artillery does have that, and that makes it what makes it deadly is that combination. Um, and then also, even though Russian, you know, cannons are sort of World War II type of stuff, for the most part, uh, it's this ability to quickly see and see results of the fire that allows Russian artillery to be deadly. Plus, they also have this laser guided shells that from a Soviet time. It's not perfect, but it actually kind of works really well with Orlan 10, which is called Orlan 30, which has this laser guided beam which directs the shells, and so the results are pretty bad. So again, the only reason Ukrainian forces managed to overcome Russian defenses here is apparently Ukrainian artillery here worked better than in other areas, and so there was not enough artillery support for the defending Russian troops, and they simply withdrew. So as you can see, the infantry is not that is not capable to hold on to the ground without artillery support. And in case of Russian infantry, it doesn't even want to do that. It just immediately if there's not enough support, they just withdrew immediately. They're not willing to sort of die as heroes, sort of to say, just if there is no artillery support. Now let's move to the last section of the front line along the Dnipro River. Things here more or less the same. Russian sources report that there is that they expect that there will be some major Ukrainian landing on the eastern side of the Dnipro River, or major attack out of the bridgeheads. Don't know if that's true or not. Really depends on the plan to continue this offensive, which not really offensive if you really per textbook. Let's put this way, yeah, per propaganda system, yeah, that it sort of is defined as offensive. But basically, if there is a pressure and push on Ukrainian military forces, military top, to continue, they may do that just because it's easier to actually expand from here if there is initial sort of success and luck, because there is basically not very few minefields here, so you can quickly expand. Plus, there is not as much density of Russian troops here and Russian artillery as there is obviously on the main Zaporizhya front line. So this could be sort of another area opportunity, and sort of out of desperation, basically, area of opportunity for Ukrainian command. But at the same time, it has huge risks because it's they need the Ukrainian troops needs to cross Dnipro River. It's always easy to create a problem and create a logistical nightmare for Ukrainian side. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time.